So, you decided a constructive way of spending your afternoon was to run all over town to find some cool spots to shoot photos of your plastic model kits. And you finally found a moderately interesting location after wading your way through an endless sea of rent-a-scooters clogging up the sidewalks that you would normally use for setting up said shoot, and also for walking. You snap a couple dozen shots against a neat backdrop, fiddling with the focus to get the bokeh behind your subject just right. You adjust the kit's pose over and over to evoke the high-flying action you're going for with a low-angle shot, and everything is going well. Except for one thing. It's early spring, and everything is gray. We've talked about diffusion in my lighting video a while back, how it dulls light to cut down on harsh shadows when lighting your subjects. An overcast sky, the likes of which are not uncommon this time of year, perform the same function. With everything. Colors dull, light flattens, making the world feel as uninteresting as a flavor of the month television show about the afterlife. And slime. But sometimes, you simply have to work with what's at your disposal. Luckily, what's at your disposal can be improved by the miracle of photo editing. To an extent. You may have heard the phrase, "we'll fix it in post," at some point when referring to media production. Bad shot? We'll fix it in post. Angle a little off? We'll fix it in post. Facts are that this phrase is said almost exclusively by people unaware of what post actually is. Editing, retouching, whatever you want to call it, is only as helpful as your source material is good. The answer to "we'll fix it in post" being another common turn of phrase. Garbage in, garbage out. As the aspiring little shutterbug that you are, it's your responsibility to use all your tools at your disposal to take a good shot before considering what to fix in post. Retouching isn't going to help a photo that's out of focus, or if you accidentally shoot a superfuminative variant instead of literally anything else. Editing and retouching and such is really best for three things: color, light, and spot fixing. In keeping with the theme of do all your camera stuff on your phone because these things are stupid powerful and you literally have no excuse to say sorry for the poor quality, I took it with my phone camera, theme of these photography videos, we're going to focus on each of these things, which is where your phone's built-in camera app once again shows more versatility than you might think. We've even discussed briefly some of these capabilities in previous videos. Which of course means we're not actually using your phone's stock photo app for this tutorial. And we'll be using the free apps Adobe Photoshop Express and Adobe Photoshop Fix instead. The apps are free on both iOS and Android because you'd pirate them anyway if they weren't. But before any of that, we need a decent photo. For said photo, we're going to use the variable fighter girl VF-31J Siegfried from my previous video, Review Not Gunpla, Grischfelger vs. Siegfried, which you should watch if you haven't already, because I crave validation. To recap, it's a fun little kit with a spunky design that costs too much and has way too many stickers, all of which are terrible. It's still plenty photogenic, my less than stellar paint touch-up job notwithstanding, and could make for a fun little photo shoot with a skyline backdrop. The dull, gray, drizzly weather isn't doing us any favors, but we'll make do. Besides, we can just fix it in post, right? Here, we have our good enough photo loaded into Adobe Photoshop Express, which annoyingly only works properly in portrait mode. Once imported, your photo is added to a new project and you are greeted with a whole bunch of filters for quick and dirty social media validation. Each filter is accompanied by a name that doesn't really mean anything, and you can choose one and be done with it if you really want to. Just remember, that artsy, moody feel you think it gives the photo has been used on countless thousands of photos before it. You will only make yourself stand out less by using color shifting filters. In Adobe Photoshop Express, filters are sorted by basic, charm, whatever that means, and white balance. The white balance filters work as basic color correction presets, and work very well for shifting the image from the color temperature of your light source to that of neutral white. Since we shot outside with an overcast sky, we can use the cloudy or daylight white balance preset to start with. You can also adjust the intensity of the preset by using this slider. I chose daylight here because its effect was less intense on the background, which largely consists of dead grass. Should you so choose, you can also crop your photo using this button here, and you can even set it to a default aspect ratio based on your desired form of social media affirmation. Once that's done, we get to the Adjust tab, where we'll be spending most of our time fixing this drab image. You may be familiar with some of the following terms from my other videos, but there's more of you supporting my plastic model kit based YouTube endeavors these days, so we're just gonna take it from the top. Besides, I've seen your photos, even those ones. You could use a refresher. Exposure refers to the amount of light entering your camera's aperture behind the lens. The bigger the aperture, and the longer it's open, the brighter or more exposed the image will be. This tool simulates higher and lower exposure, brightening light areas before darker ones, unlike a generic brightness filter, which is mostly useless. For this first pass, I'm going to actually reduce the exposure of this already dark image. I'm doing this to bring back some of the detail lost in the cloud cover in the background. We'll use other tools as we go along to make the image less dreary. This starts with enhancing the brightness of the highlights and shadows of the image. While this reduces some of the detail that we got back by dropping the exposure, this brings some life back into the Siegfried and still keeps the brightness reasonable for our sky above the port tuned to a dead channel in the background. Now, we'll adjust the contrast of the image to make the darkest areas darker and the brightest areas brighter, separating the subject from the fairly flat background. I reduced the exposure further to keep the bright areas from getting overexposed, and reduced the black levels to enhance the contrast of the image's deepest, darkest places. I can choose to adjust the temperature and tint here as needed to get the overall white balance just right. But not much adjustment is actually needed here, thanks to the white balance preset we used earlier. Way to think ahead, me! Now, I use the Vibrance tool to improve something along the lines of color contrast versus saturation in the image, I guess? It's weird, but it makes the colors pop a little better. Then, I increase the color saturation to boost the color overall. Even more nebulous than Vibrance is this button labeled Clarity, which is basically sharpening or fading the edges of your subject, while Dehaze works on detailing your unfocused areas as best it can. Fade blends your image with neutral gray, because clearly this image needs more gray, and Grain makes the image more, well, grainy, which is why we'll use neither of these things. I'm also going to sharpen our image here, but just slightly. Sharpen uses math to add detail where detail doesn't exist. Not unlike that one scene in Blade Runner with the physics-defying photo scanner thing, which you may note doesn't actually exist. It's very easy to sharpen too much and add a significant amount of grainy noise to your image. Use this tool sparingly, or preferably, not at all. And with that, our first editing pass is done. Now, we're going to take each of our tools and fuss with them a bit until we get them where the image becomes more lively. I'm reducing the contrast to brighten the overall image, then adjusting the whites to bring the brightness down even further. Then, I'm going back to the exposure setting to brighten everything up. Next, I'm going to use the Dehaze tool to bring back some of the background detail we lost when we brought the exposure up. And if this seems like a lot of tiny adjustments for just one photo, you would be right. Except when you tap this button here and compare it to your original and see that all those tiny tweaks really made a dramatic difference. We're not done though. This is still a bit dark and dreary for my liking, honestly, which means it's time for some spot retouching. Photoshop Fix is a great tool for this task. I open our edited photo in Photoshop Fix, which still only works properly in portrait mode for some reason, and we'll use the Light tab to choose what we want to lighten and darken. With Lighten selected, we're going to paint with our finger over top where we want to lighten the image, which in this case is our Siegfried. We can see the difference we've made by using this button to view our original edited photo. Next, we do the same with our Darken tool, darkening some of that dead grass so it's not so glaringly obvious in the shot. Now it's time for the color. I'm first going to use the Pop button to make the blue hues on our armor explode in color. Then I'm going to desaturate that dead grass. I can also soften the brush I'm using in this setting here. This will make the edges of the areas you select smoother, and therefore less noticeable. A couple more quick tweaks with this tool, and our editing job is complete. As you work on retouching an image, it's easy to forget just how much work you've done changing your image around. Long editing sessions can lead to eye fatigue, especially on small screens, literally tricking your eyeballs into seeing a photo differently than it actually looks. It's important to take occasional breaks to rest and reset your eyes, and always compare your edits to the original image. You'll be blown away by just how much a few small details can really improve your final product. Now sure, you could just shoot in the daytime with a clear sky and get a better result, you might say. You're right. But what if you have a busy schedule? You're itching to shoot, but you have, say, work or class, or there's a new episode you have to watch of that slime show that nobody likes, and this moment right now is the only free time you're gonna have for like a week. Procrastination by perfectionism is the killer of creativity. Don't wait around for the best conditions to come to you. Just shoot. And if you take your time and experiment with the tools at your disposal, you'll still get some good shots out of your Badgunpla, despite the dreary state of the world around you. And if you crave some instant photo gratification, hit up the Discord sometime and share those shots with our community using the link below. See you next time. I mean, seriously, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, over in the back there, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That is too many scooters.